Okay, so this is step 2 of the planning process. We're here. This is something we would do, again, only for hazards that during the previous step were ranked as being of medium to high gravity, because they have a high likelihood to happen, to occur, and a very a predicted dire and significant impact. Okay, and this is going to be the short scenario that will be our planning scenario, against which everything else is going to be planned for. Okay, let me put this into the full slide mode, sorry. Okay. So the objectives for this session and this step is basically to start anticipating on all the plausible events, the chain of events that you expect, that you can predict will happen when this hazard is unfolding into a disaster, in a crisis, and anticipate on the aggravating factors, on the direction the situation will take. This is the step where we start predicting a bit roughly impact and humanitarian consequences, and defining key planning assumptions, such as the predicted duration of the crisis, what geographical areas are going to be affected, who will be the most and first affected population groups, and we will have to define roughly a PIN, a number for person in need of assistance for nutrition. Okay, so that step, when do you ideally take that step? Well, it's very much complementary to the step 1 risk analysis and monitoring, and it can also be tied to this phase of the year where you do the humanitarian needs overview or HNO analysis. And again, we do it for main disaster risks of medium to high gravity. And similarly to step 1, as much as possible, engage your government counterparts. Make sure that you engage with personnel who might be among the first responders during the very first week of the crisis onset. And as much as possible, work with women-led organizations and local organizations who are specializing in addressing the needs of persons with disabilities as much as possible, for their specific needs to be taken into account. So here we will keep things simple. We are developing a scenario that will be just summarized in a short paragraph with a lot of planning assumptions. And this is a scenario that you may have to update within the very first 2 to 3 days of the crisis onset, so that it's adjusted with the new information coming in. So remember, using new data. Remember that how ERP, we said yesterday, is a continuous process and somehow a looped process. When you're developing scenarios, you need to consider what's already known in the geographical area for which you're doing the planning. What are the already known humanitarian needs for different population groups? Of course, we focus on the nutrition specific aspect of things. So you'll have to consider pre-existing nutrition vulnerabilities, all the main underlying causes, and predict those who will become more prominent when this specific risk against which you're planning will start to become more significant. You need to also take into account any existing programs or ongoing response that may be already there, and coping capacities of government and other actors might be already operating in the area. Okay? Okay. So remember how yesterday I explained that the workshop package that the GNC developed to operationalize the step-by-step guide is meant for you to be doing an ERP event in your country over a 3 full-day workshop. Here we are only, 3 half days, so I had to summarize, and we don't have the time to go over all exercises. So for that step, you have in the package 2 group work exercises. And this first one, we will not do it today. We'll focus on the second one. This first one is really for you as a cluster, as a sector with all your partners. Develop your short planning scenario. Looking again at the contributing factors, at the impact, and start anticipating some constraints. Okay? So yesterday we started to look at how our case study, the imaginary country called Zwantipolis. And so let's pretend that we've done, we are all from the nutrition cluster of Zwantipolis, we've all done this exercise, this scenario building exercise. And here you see, where am I? In the our Zwantipolis ERP plan draft, where we saw the risk analysis we had done yesterday. Here is the short scenario. You see, it's just a short paragraph where we have predicted that in the capital city of Zwantipolis and province A, people are fleeing from the politically motivated violence, and they are moving into province B. Okay, so in province B, we have an influx of 50,000 IDPs in inadequate shelters. They are in conditions exposing this population, to public health threats. Health services in the area are overwhelmed, and the local authority is not in a capacity to provide assistance to the scale required in that very situation. We can expect that in such a situation, we'll see likely, for instance, the protection cluster might start flagging that women face barriers in accessing services, reporting difficulties with breastfeeding, or accessing nutritious foods and potable water. And so we predicted that malnutrition is going to increase and will peak in 4 weeks' time. And in province B, we predict that we'll see a rise in the number of SAM cases of 40%. And we predict an emergency nutrition response must be scaled up for a period of 3 months. Okay, so that's our short scenario. You'll see it takes, again, 3-4 sentences. You don't need more than that. That's your planning assumption. This is against that we are going to do the planning. Okay, let me go back here. Now, the exercise we're going to do together today is that during that step, this is also, and for each crisis scenario, the main 2 to 3 crisis scenario you're working against, you need to define your people in need and start predicting key immediate needs for the predicted duration of the crisis based on your planning assumptions. So we have to brainstorm a little bit together as a nutrition cluster. What methods are we going to use to derive this nutrition PIN, the number of people in need of a nutrition assistance? We're going to think of the data, the information we need, maybe whether we need to look at any historical trends of malnutrition, to see a little bit how wasting could fluctuate, or other nutrition-related needs could fluctuate in such a scenario, and what are the tools we could use for that, and whether we have any missing data. What can we do at preparedness phase to be able to quickly derive a PIN when the crisis hit, or adjust a PIN when the crisis hit? So some countries, some of you may already have your nutrition PIN that you estimated for the entire year, for the entire country, and it's in your HNO, the Humanitarian Needs Overview, okay? Here, you may want to use the same methodology and tool, I don't know, to now estimate and predict what will be this surge of nutrition needs that we can expect during this crisis scenario we are planning against. In other countries where you may not have yet a method and a tool for PIN, it's the time to think about it. And maybe you want to have a look at the GNC tool called Nutrition Humanitarian Needs Analysis, and think and discuss with your partners whether this could become a standard tool for you. Okay? So we're going to do this exercise together. We're going to split into groups. But before I want to show you, I want everyone to go to the ERP Google Drive. Okay, I put the link again at the beginning of today's session. You click on half day 2. This is where the materials for today is. And you click on session 6, group work for PIN. Okay, and it will bring you to that Excel file. Remember, we are all working online on that tool together at the same time. We're building in real time our ERP plan. So this is just the first tab of this Excel file. Is just an attempt to draw a map of Zwantipolis. Remember how this is an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? This was just for you to see that I listed the villages. You remember we have this capital, urban, densely populated area by the coast line here. And this is here and in province A in blue, where we have the violence, and people are fleeing in province B. That's the village in green here. Okay, but that's just, yeah, for the sake of picturing a little bit Zwantipolis. Now, on the second tab, you have some characteristic of Zwantipolis population. Okay, the total population, and some figures disaggregated by age group. The third tab, we're going to look at it together. So this is where I just summarized everything we just looked at, and the scenario and the predicted impact. And remember, I don't know if we said it yesterday, acute malnutrition was above 15% in province A and B prior this crisis. And during the first exercises, when we predicted our humanitarian impact for that scenario, we predicted that some cases will increase by 40%, and we need to plan for a 3-month period. So the exercise we'll do as a group when you will be split into rooms is really to reflect on what methodology as a nutrition cluster you will use to estimate your PIN, what tools will you be using, what data do you need, what is missing, and what do you do at preparedness phase. And you may want to look this fourth tab that is just for the sake of this case study, but that I extracted from country examples. It's a very simple, simplified file that could be used to start having your PIN there. Okay? Okay, we're going to split it into groups. I'm putting the instructions in the chat box. And is there any questions?
There was a question in the chat box before the group work from Jacinta. Probably can address it before the group work.
Yes, maybe we can take this question now. Let me look at it. Okay, can the severity mapping that is used when developing HNO be used during the scenario building? I think yes, definitely. Definitely, as we said yesterday, let's not reinvent the wheel. If in countries you already have risk mapped, main hazards and disaster risk have been ranked, and there are also already risk analysis and scenario for each of them, or any outcomes of an HNO can be used, definitely. Here we just want to have I'm trying to keep things simple. We just need to have a short crisis scenario against which we can do a planning and start, basing our planning on something. Okay. Okay, so I hope the instructions for the group work are clear. I will break the group into smaller groups, and I will come visit in your respective rooms. I hope the rooms will break in a more effective way than yesterday. And we will take 15 minutes for this. I'm setting up a time here. Okay. And I'm now moving you to your rooms. So see you later. I don't know how it went in the different groups. We're going to take a few minutes to hear, maybe there is a group who would like to volunteer, a participant. I'd like a participant to share a little bit the outcomes of the discussion you had in your groups. If I can ask someone to volunteer and do a bit of a restitution. I see that a lot of things were documented on the slide, on the tool here. It's interesting to see that. Is everybody back?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, so can I have a volunteer? Isaac, yes, please.
Well, basically, first of all, I just want to admit that we didn't have enough time, so we didn't finish the entire process. But I think in the discussion, the most important thing was to have a kind of common understanding in terms of how we approach it. And we had two kind of, approach. One is that we use the global method for estimating the PIN among under 5 when the pregnant lactating women. And so how do we come to the 3 months? Sorry, the number of the PIN. We agree that we take the total number of the total IDP times the proportion of under 5, and then you use that one times the prevalence of acute malnutrition in the area, and then times the global the correction factor, I think is 2.6. And then you have the annual PIN, as we mentioned. You divide it by 12 or whatever, you multiply by 3, you have the 3 months, and then you adjust it by the 40%, which was expected to be increasing. And so that was one method. And then the other one was that if the program was running very well, with exhaustive, admission in the program for both moderately malnourished and severe, then you can just, add maybe the number of cases are likely to be moving along with the population, and then you adjust, by 40% because that's the expected increase. And you can have an initial kind of number, and those number can be updated from time to time. So that was the I think the approach. We didn't go into detail of having boys and girls because I'm not sure there was a provision of what the percentage of under 5 who are boys and girls, but we were thinking that we could use 51 times 49. Sometimes happens in most of the context. Yeah, maybe that's the kind of brief which we were discussing, and I think that's where we wanted to go that way. But it's not easy when you have a big team, and because if it's one, you can put a formula, you get it. But within the group, you need to negotiate and agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Isaac. In the span of 15 minutes, you've pointed at so many interesting points. Congratulations to your group. So yes, when this was to help you realize that there might be different methods that one would use to predict your humanitarian impact and derive your planning scenario. And ideally, this is something you would need to do at preparedness with your partners. It can be done by the SAG, the Strategic Advisory Group of your cluster, if you have one, or a small task force that is brainstorming on those kind of things. But you need, ideally, the nutrition cluster coordinator shouldn't be the one person deciding on what formula or what method to use to build an immediate response plan with key figures. Again, it's something where we should be collectively working on, and maybe there will be different countries adopting different methods. You pointed at the two methods that we are usually playing with. And also, I don't know if you had the time to appreciate all the data you need to compile beforehand to be able to do those estimates. And maybe it means you need to have your full population data disaggregated by age group, by sex, to be able to do that. And this is something you want to prepare for, not just, I was hearing from a group that, okay, we are in an emergency, where are our data? Where are the disaggregated data? Well, this is not during the emergency or once the emergency hits that you want to prepare for this. This should be done before. And also discuss what tool ideally could be used to quickly be able to adjust those planning figures, your PIN, and we'll see later on the targets. It could be very useful to have a simple tool that by adjusting a few parameters allow you to automatically calculate your PIN. We have a bit of time, so I would like maybe to hear from another group. If you want to share a little bit the outcome of your brainstorming session. I see hands coming up. Sorry, I don't see who is. I see Geraldine. Geraldine, you want to come in?
Oui, thank you, Cécile. Very quickly, in the name of Group 1, and also to complement Isaac, like very interesting point on how to estimate PIN with the population that's through the year. And we had a discussion within our group to actually first take into account also the needs of the population that will be receiving the IDPs, much more strongly that sometimes we have tendency to forget the needs of the host population, or just to mention it a bit aside. And we thought here we really need to be conscious and group those needs, not disappearing the categories and not making them disappear, but then really to take them into account properly. And also for this estimation of PIN, because sometimes taking the year divided by the number of months, depending on the situation and the crisis, this might give different numbers. So we thought about using the severity ranking about the situation to make like a proportion of people that will be moving and proportion of people that will fall into humanitarian needs. No, so it's a bit a different approach from Isaac. And again, as you were saying, no, it's always different idea from different clusters and groups. But I wanted to share this also.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much, Geraldine. Very good points. And this is also why I think that when we prepare for that, we need to base the thinking also, as you said, on maybe historical trends of acute malnutrition. So if there is, as Isaac said, in a situation where you have already acute malnutrition treatment ongoing, you may have admissions of SAM and MAM cases already happening. And as you said, Geraldine, it's important to take, how this admissions fluctuates throughout time to better anticipate how the additional case loads will be from that sort of baseline admission. So this is again something that needs to be discussed maybe with your government counterpart, with all your partners, so that we're, as Isaac phrased it, we are under the common understanding of a fairly solid method to use to estimate that surge in needs. And yeah, sometimes it's going to be based on an increase from the SAM admissions, or maybe we take a yearly PIN and we divide it by months, but as you said, maybe it doesn't really reflect well the some seasonality to it. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the PowerPoint presentation. So thank you very much, colleagues. Again, this is something you will be doing with your partners in country, ideally, and you will have a lot more time. in the workshop package, I think this is a step where you have 2.5 hours to really go through your scenario and start deriving your predicted impact and estimate your key figures like the PIN. Jacinta, you have a question?
Yes,
Please.
I just have a quick question. I mean, thank you, Isaac and Geraldine. We've talked so much about estimation of acute malnutrition PIN, but there are issues of breastfeeding that we saw in our country. So we need also to estimate the PIN on EIYCF. And I mean, I know we can use severity ranking, but I think if we don't have time, normally you can target the entire population of pregnant women and lactating, depending on the capacity you have. So regardless whether it is 3 months or 1 year, you will need the same number. I thought we just need to discuss that as well, because we haven't discussed the EIYCF component of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jacinta. You're right. This is a good point. So again, this is something that would be more thoroughly explained in the GNC humanitarian needs analysis guidance, where you ideally would need to look at a bunch of nutrition-related indicators, including any information available you may have on breastfeeding practices, complementary feeding, and you may want also to derive a method that will allow you to define also a PIN for those mothers or mother-baby pairs you want to you estimate will be in need of assistance during that scenario. So again, this is something that each country will have to define and tailor based on their respective nutrition situation. Yeah, and often what happens from my experience, but I'm happy to hear from others, is that to avoid too much of double counting, there is a tendency to then take the higher PIN. Yeah, there are some countries where, although as a nutrition cluster, you may plan for your people in need of treatment for acute malnutrition, people in need for micronutrient supplementation, people in need for IYCF intervention, it's often unlikely that we have the sum of all this. So then you take the higher PIN. But again, this depends on countries. And what else I wanted to say? And still, yes, try to have this defined for the duration of the crisis, because most of the time you may have in such situation, maybe OCHA or a donor or the government coming to you and say, we have to have your key planning figures for the next 3 months to come. So we need your figures by COB today for PIN, your main strategic objectives and your funding requirement for the next 3 months. And sometimes, you know, we've been asked, I remember when I was in the field, to plan for worst case scenario and best case scenario. And in that event, you have to prioritize. And sometimes you say, okay, I'm in my best case scenario, I have that many villages that I will include in my planning. And in worst case scenario, it's a more large scale response, and I will include additional geographical location. And with a simple tool, if you have established one at preparedness level, you use some filtering in the Excel file, and you just filter and adjust your key figures for those given geographical location quickly. For all this to be indeed easy to deal with at the very first day of a crisis or week of a crisis, you need to prepare before, not when the crisis hits, because you see how the planning it takes. So this is why it needs to be anticipated as much as possible. I see more hands. Muzafaru, you want to come in?
Yes, Cecile, thank you. I just wanted to ask as well that when we look at the two population groups, B moving to A, and then we're estimating the people in need, I think both groups are affected differently. So how do you maybe work out that? Because the host and those on the move are affected differently. So how do you, is there any figure that maybe any percentage that you apply to cater for that difference?
Okay, thank you, Muzafaru. And it comes back to one point Geraldine also flagged, and I didn't come back to it. Indeed, in your planning tool, you may want to add a column for planning on key figures, disaggregating by host community and IDPs. Here, for the sake of exercise, we kind of understood that the prevalence of acute malnutrition looked similar in province A and B, so it was just for easy thinking. But you may indeed have a population moving with a different nutrition situation pre-crisis, moving into a province where the nutrition situation is very different. So you may have to take those differences into account. So in some countries, we in such an example of a tool, we would add additional columns and maybe factor a bit things differently, whether we are planning, we're deriving our figure for IDPs or host communities. And then you will take this into account later on in the subsequent step when we do response design and maybe start tailoring your response package a bit differently, whether you're assisting the host community or the IDPs. Okay. Isaac, I see a hand. You want to come back and share something, or is it a old?
Just a quick one in terms of the under 5 population. I think our experience here in Sudan, and I think in other areas also, that if you have a population moving due to, for example, conflict, the 15% or the proportion of under 5 may not apply, because the majority of people who are moving actually are pregnant and lactating women. So may have actually ending up having either 40% or even more of those IDP actually, under 5 and the pregnant and lactating women. So the 15% or the proportion of under 5, which is normally there, may not apply. So it depends maybe from the type of IDP being actually addressed. So just want to flag that. Thank you.
Exactly. And this is also why you remember yesterday how I said that maybe one thing that is important to do at this phase of the planning process is to reflect on past emergencies, and maybe you can, such a learning from a past emergency, inform your ERP plan and your scenario here. You'll say, okay, we know that with this population on the move, let's adjust our proportion of under 5 according to what we predict will happen based on our knowledge from previous crises. And again, this is really about preparedness, that you have the time and the mental space to think about those things and build your tool, maybe with the support of an IM specialist that will allow you to quickly make some adjustments on these figures for easy absorption of new information coming as well. But yeah, good point. Okay, so colleagues, let's go back to this slide. This was really for you to appreciate a little bit what it takes to work on those planning assumptions. And ideally, when you will do it with your partners, try to assign one of your participants, I failed to do it today with you, to document the outcomes of your planning in the ERP plan draft as you go, okay? And bring your document the things you're planning for with your partners right there as you speak. And if during that first exercise, I think some of you realized, oh, we need data disaggregated by age groups and sex, and we may need the proportion of children with disabilities. Go to have someone who is tasked during that session to capture a preparedness action already in the preparedness action work plan, okay? It's not this one, sorry, it's here. So you see we are on with this work plan template, then it can be you decide whether you want to use that template or something else. You start entering, you know, for building scenario, all the things you need to do at preparedness phase to be able to estimate your PIN, predict your impact and humanitarian consequences, okay? Try to do that as much as possible when you will do this with your partners in country, because this is how you're gonna maximize your chances to have actually an ERP plan drafted by the end of your workshop, okay? This is also during that step that we also start, no, sorry, I wanted to say something else. Forget about this. This is just the last slide about, yeah, sorry. So during that step, we also start identifying key immediate needs. I don't know if you have a chance to look at those key immediate needs I put, sorry. Yeah, in the Zwantipolis scenario here, I started, and you will do it also with your partners. At this stage, you start already predicting key immediate needs. And then we'll go more in depth into this when we come to the next, the following steps with response analysis and response design. Okay. Okay, so now remember, for this scenario building, focus on the main point of the scenario. The duration, the affected population, the geographical areas. Keep things simple as much as possible, and plan all this ahead. And so before organizing such an exercise jointly with your partners, you need to prepare a bit and have already compiled your population data disaggregated by age, sex, and by vulnerable groups, and have your trends of acute malnutrition and any other indicators and trends for any other indicators you may want to use for your planning process. I would like to encourage you colleagues and your partners to also go to the GNC Learn platform, where you will be finding a lot of short online self-paced courses where you can get more details on how to do PIN calculation and how to use the GNC Nutrition Humanitarian Needs Analysis guidance. Okay? Okay, that's it for that first session of the day.
Cécile,
Yes.
can we speak quickly about the GNC tool that you had on the slide, because I don't know if all colleagues know about it, the nutrition humanitarian needs analysis, because it's kind of very interesting and it could be scary, but it has automatic calculation. So that's really when it comes really interesting to use it.
Yeah, so I put the link in the PowerPoint. It's also, the link is also in the step-by-step guide, and it brings you here. Here you already have a short video that explains how to go about this tool. You have a PDF document. It's a beautiful document, very comprehensive. I'm looking at it often, and beyond doing just needs analysis, because there are also some elements for response planning, and an Excel file that is also a very comprehensive tool, as Geraldine said. And I'm downloading it by clicking here. And I think this is available in different language. And I won't have the time to bring you through that tool. And also, maybe you can feel free to reach out to GNC colleagues. We have specialists who can help you appreciate how to use that tool. So I'm opening the Excel file. I'm not sure we will have time to go through it, because where is it? Sorry, it's taking a bit of time to open on my laptop.
No, don't worry. It was just to put the focus 1 minute on this tool that can be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Mainly because of like the pre-entered indicators and the automatic calculation based on population proportion.
Yeah. So here it is. You have a first tab with a bunch of instructions, and you have indicator registries. You have different thresholds. I mean, it's a really, really comprehensive tool with a lot of different tabs. Okay. What I think is quite important is that whatever you will be using needs to work for you. And often you also have a master file with population figures that might be provided by OCHA. And often what's important is that, sorry, and I'm coming back to the example I showed here. Where am I? What's important is that in some countries where we have a lot of geographical areas, you need to organize your file in a way that you can easily apply some filters. So I'm not going to do it now because it's going to take too much time, and I don't know even how to do it here. But make sure that you organize your file in a way that it mirrors what's done by OCHA, that you use maybe the same file with the population figures, and that you have a way to filter, so that if you need to do everything just for province A, then you just filter for province A, and then deal with the key figures just for that province. So keep that in mind. Have a look at the GNC file, see whether you want to use it as a standard tool. Reach out to the GNC colleagues if you need support with that. Okay. Okay. So let me see. Do we have now, yes, a comment from Tenka with links on the e-learning modules. Thank you. And Magnat is also adding a link to the GNC Learn platform. I think this is great.
Yes, and Ben Allen has put a link where to find the button to request support in case you need some technical support for all this.
Perfect. Thank you very much, colleagues. We're going to take a 10-minute break, a 10-minute health break. So we come back at 3:15 Geneva time. Okay? Yes. See you in a bit, colleagues. 10 minutes.
Thank you. See you just now.
Thank you.